The big ones that we learned this week are what a fall from grace for Representative Tony Gonzales, ending his reelection bid after admitting to affair with a staffer who then went later on and unfortunately committed suicide. So a very, very up and down road here for Representative Tony Gonzales. But we want to now bring you one of the reporters who broke this massive story and led to this happening. Julie Grace Brufke, great to have you on. Thanks so much for joining us on Live Now from Fox. And first off, what did you make here of the moment that we learned of Tony Gonzales dropping?
Well, he dropped his statement late last evening after some pressure from leadership to drop out of the race with no mention of the scandal, but has asserted that he does plan to stay on through the rest of his term, which I know is welcome news to leadership as they're facing a very slim majority. But truly a very tragic story with what happened to that staffer. And we saw in recent days a huge push from a bunch of his colleagues to step down there. So ultimately kind of met that pressure and stepped down, announced he isn't going to run for re-election.
Now, at the same time, are Democrats going to maybe pile on even more pressure so that he drops out right now and doesn't go the term?
Now, it's possible. I've talked to some Democrats that have been open to that, but they have some members with their own issues that are under investigation right now and facing indictment. So I don't know if they want to have the tit for tat there on expulsions, where it launches some chaos for them too. So it remains to be seen. But if I'm putting money on it right now, unlikely.
And going forward here, is there any possible way for the victim's family? Are they going to be entering any kind of civil lawsuits against Tony Gonzales? Where are we at right now on that part?
No, I'd spoken to the family. They were considering filing a civil lawsuit. I know that they had had some legal exchanges with Gonzales, who accused them of extortion. I think they are going to move forward with that. I have to back in with them post the announcement with Congressman Gonzales and ultimately announcing he's not running again. But I know that was ultimately their plan.
And let's just again talk really about this fall from grace here for Representative Gonzales, who was trying desperately to keep this tight-lipped, obviously. But how did this all sort of just explode on him?
So I initially had written a story about this back in October. I had spoken to somebody who his staffer, Regina, had confided in. And I think really when people started to see text messages and other staffers speaking out on background, things kind of amplified right ahead of early voting there in the primary. So he initially kind of denied things up until the 11th hour there when the receipts kind of dropped. And I know that leadership was kind of disappointed with how he had handled things with his radio interview when he admitted the affair, where he kind of took aim at the husband there and felt he had kind of handled that poorly. So it's definitely been kind of a roller coaster to see all this happen, but truly a tragic story.
Yeah, tragic all the way around. Are you surprised that, given the technology that we have right now, everyone knows that if you send something, it's so easily able to be screenshotted and sent to were you surprised at the end of the day just how open these text messages were and how fluid this congressman was speaking to his staffer?
Well, yeah, one of the interesting things is her husband had sent to, I believe it was 8 of the staffers in his office announcing that the affair had happened. And obviously there are a lot of whispers in Washington where it's kind of surprising the story hadn't come out sooner. But his office did have a reputation for high staff turnover and him being a very difficult boss. So not totally surprising there. But yeah, clearly a huge abuse of power looking at those text messages.
Yeah, absolutely. And while the political career is over for Gonzales, what do you think now personally going forward? How does he try to rebound from this? Is there any inclination of what he will do next?
Well, we'll see. It's I think it's going to be very difficult for him to go get a typical post-Congress job like lobbying, given the reaction from his colleagues in the House. So, I know when he did his interview, he said that he had reconciled with his wife and He felt he had forgiveness from God there. So we'll see what he does next. But I mean, whether he tries to run again down the line, all kind of remains to be seen.
Yeah, absolutely. Julie Grace Brufke, thanks so much for joining us here on Live Now from Fox, giving us an update, and always great reporting. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me.
Take care.